Chapter 5, Managing Diversity. Here's another example of futuristic thinking, thinking out of the box in terms of hiring employees. The learning objectives for the day are: define workplace diversity and explain why managing it is so important. Develop your skills at valuing and working with diverse individuals and teams. Describe the changing workplaces in the United States and around the world. Explain the different types of diversity found in workplaces. Discuss the challenges managers face in managing diversity. Describe various workplace diversity. Know how to find a great sponsor, mentor, and be a great protege. Diversity has been one of the most popular business topics over the last 2 decades. It ranks with modern business disciplines such as quality, leadership, and ethics. So what's our definition of workplace diversity? We're defining it as the way in which people in an organization are different and are similar to one another. Notice that our definition not only focuses on the differences, but the similarities of employees. Diversity has traditionally been considered a term used by human resource departments associated with fair hiring practices, discrimination, and inequality. But diversity today is considered to be much more. Exhibit 5.1 illustrates an historical overview of how the concept of meeting and workplace diversity has evolved. The demographic characteristics that we tend to think of when we think of diversity are age, race, gender, ethnicity, and so on, are just the tip of the iceberg. These demographical differences reflect surface level diversity, which are the easily perceived differences that may trigger certain stereotypes, but that do not necessarily reflect the way people think or feel. Such surface level differences in characteristics can affect the way people perceive others, especially when it comes to assumptions or stereotyping. As people get to know one another, these surface level differences becomes less important, and deep level diversity, differences in values, personality, and work preferences becomes more important. Diversity is, after all, about people both inside and outside the organization. The people management benefits that organization gets because of their workforce diversity. Diversity is, after all, about people both inside and outside the organization. The people management benefits that organization gets because of their workforce diversity efforts revolve around attracting and retaining a talented workforce. Performance benefits that organization gets from workforce diversity include cost savings and improvements in organizational functioning. The cost savings can be significant when organizations that cultivate diversity workforce reduce employees' turnover, absenteeism, and the chances of lawsuits. Many companies are experiencing the benefits that diversity can bring. Exhibit 5.2 looks at why workforce diversity is so important to organizations. The benefits falls into 3 main categories: people management, organizational performance, and strategic. Exhibit 5.3 provides the projected population breakdown and is projected to change by 2050. The impact of the Hispanic and Asian population will change the way we market, product we serve, and how we manage, since they will become a larger part of the labor force as well as consumers. Can you identify why any of these current changes based on the changing demographical pattern? How much do you know about global aging? Let's take a moment and answer these by ourselves. Number 1 is true. However, within 10 years, older people will outnumber children for the first time in our history. It's D. The older population is growing by 870,000 people each month. 3 is the Caribbean, with 78% of all people aged 65 and older in 2008. 4, false. 62% of all people aged 65 and older now live in the developing region of Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Oceania. Number 5. Japan, with 22% of its population aged 65 and over, has surpassed Italy as the world's oldest country. Why should Japan reverse this trend? Diversity is a big issue and the important issue in today's workplaces. What types of dissimilarities, that is, diversity, do we find in those workplaces? Exhibit 5.5 shows that several types of workplace diversity. Discussing diversity is sensitive because it involves people, but we need to go beyond our comfort zone to understand the legal issues and, more importantly, to do the right thing. You have a transgender worker and they would like to use the restroom of the gender that they identify with. What should you do? A Muslim woman wears a headscarf to work, but it's against company policy for people to wear hats. And what should you do? Race and ethnicity are important types of diversity in organization. We define race as a biological heritage that people use to identify themselves. Most people identify themselves as part of a racial group. Such racial classification are an integral part of a country's culture, social, and legal environments. Ethnicity is related to race, but it refers to social traits, such as one cultural background or allegiance that are shared by human populations. People with disabilities are the largest minorities in the United States. Estimates vary, but believe that there are some 19.8 million working-age Americans with disability, and that number continues to increase as military troops return from Iraq and Afghanistan. 1990s was a watershed year for persons with disability. That was the year that the Americans with Disability Act became law. The acronym GLBT, which refers to gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people, is used more frequently in relation to the diversity of sexual orientation and gender identity. Sexual orientation has been called the last acceptable bias. A bias is a term that describes a tendency or preference towards a particular perspective or idea. It is generally seen as a one-sided perspective. Our personal biases cause us to have preconceived opinions about people and things. Such preconceived opinions can create all kinds of inaccurate judgments and attitudes. Our prejudice can be based on all the types of diversity we discuss: race, gender, ethnicity, age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, or even other personal characteristics. A major factor in prejudice is stereotyping, which is judging a person on the basis of one's perception of a group to which he or she belongs. For instance, married persons are more stable employees than single persons. This is an example of stereotyping. Keep in mind that not all stereotyping are inaccurate. However, many stereotypes aren't factual and distort our judgment. Both prejudice and stereotyping can lead to someone treating others or a member of a particular group unequally. That's discrimination, which is when someone acts out of their prejudice towards people who are the targets of their perspective. In the 1980s, the term glass ceilings first used in a Wall Street Journal article referring to the invisible barrier that separates women and minorities from top management positions. The idea of a ceiling means someone is blocking upward movement, and the idea of glass is that whatever blocking the way isn't immediately apparent. It is my personal belief that if you do something that you would be embarrassed about, if the news media shows up on your doorstep, you shouldn't do it. Think about the fraternity incident related to race or posting nude pictures of women on a private Facebook page. By treating everyone with respect and try to understand them from their perspective will go a long way to avoid legal issues as well as just doing the right thing. We will now have a panel talking about diversity and discrimination. Here are the optional homework assignment for this week.